And what is up, GC Live fam? We are here, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Tuesday episode of the show. Chris and I were just at lunch, and we were able to bump into a very fine Gamecock Central / GC Live supporter. He said, "Hey guys, I need a show to listen to on the way home." So shout out to you, sir. I don't even think we caught your name, but we appreciate the support. And here it is. Here's a show just for you. If anybody else wants to listen, they can listen as well. He is Chris Clark. Again, I'm Wes Mitchell. This show is brought to you by our good buddy, Clint Hammond, a super Gamecock fan and a super mortgage dude. He's Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network, 803-771-6933. If you're in the market for a new home, just give Clint a shout. Shoot him an email, C Hammond, that's the letter C, Hammond at mortgagenetwork.com. His NMLS number is 71597. Whatever questions you may have, Clint will help you out through that process. We'll tell you a little bit later on about our other primary GC Live sponsor later on the show. Chris, what's up, man? How we doing?
Man, excitement is building. I think we've had a bunch of conversations today, whether just about Gamecock Central stuff, tickets, the schedule, doing the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on 107.5, talking about some of that same stuff, lunch. We're talking about a bunch of different Gamecock-related things, roster composition, and just realizing how close we're getting. 25 days away. I mean, I really have continued to sense the excitement building among the Gamecock fan base. And I've had my head down so much working on all these different things that when I have a second to come up for air, I'm like, you know what? This is getting really, really close. And so I'm starting to get excited now.
Yeah, it is, man. So speaking of 107.5, shout out to my buddy WG, Bill Gunner. He always marks the start of kickoff or like the start of the football season when you go to the grocery store and you look at the milk, and if the milk carton best buy date is on or after the date of game one of kickoff, then that's how you know it's here. And we're not talking about, like the different, I know like almond milk and all that stuff probably lasts longer. Legitimately traditional dairy milk, when it says, drink by September 4th, football season is here. It's upon us. So I've always stole that from him. I thought that was kind of cool. I have
Good one.
not seen one yet that matches that, but we're getting very, very close to reaching that point. Plenty to talk about. We got to hit a little bit of recruiting today as well. And Chris, we got to start with practice though. Practice observations. We had Friday practice where we got to watch a little bit of it. Then we had the Monday practice as well. Of course, we are live and recording this on Tuesday afternoon. Some players spoke today. I'll try to share a few notes from that. Colin Taylor, Michael Sauls for Gamecock Central are both at the media availability. So, Chris, let's go back to practice yesterday. A small glimpse at some 11 on 11. Other than that, actually first 11 on 11 we've seen in the two practices this season so far, this preseason. Give me your first takeaway from practice.
Well, I'm going to try not to rip off blatantly from you a couple that you mentioned earlier that were really good points that I probably would have also made. We did, here's something that stood out. We did get to see some very, very quick glimpses of 11 on 11. And to kind of set the scene for people who weren't there, it was basically some plays run in rapid succession with an 11 on offense versus an 11 on defense, very quick play, move down the field, and then there's a group or two behind them, and they're all kind of gradually going down the field doing this. Very fast-paced, very quick. And so we're all, okay, who's where, taking different notes and things like that. One thing that stood out to me is just some of the new faces and how they're integrating, right? Just continuing to see, no surprise, but seeing Spencer Rattler out there, seeing Juice Wells out there. We saw them during the spring, but, now Austin Stogner's in the mix. So now you're seeing some packages where you've got Stogner and Jaheim Bell out there at the same time, and that just kind of gets your wheels turning of some of the possibilities there. You see, Corey Rucker out there working in. Seeing some of the combinations even defensively, and this one is kind of a ripoff of one observation you had earlier, but seeing that yesterday, for some reason, we don't know if this means much or if it's just rotating in, but Mo Kaba working with the ones, as I think Debo Williams was as well. Was that just working them in with the ones because they're going to be playing a lot? Maybe, or maybe something more. But just seeing some of the different combinations and continuing to see some of the new faces and how they're, integrating and how important they're going to be to this year's team.
Yeah, man. And I'll say this: I actually noticed when we were out there day one, they didn't really do like any 11-11 that we saw. I'm sure they did it later on in practice. But just with them rolling the linebackers out there when they were just working on getting like lined up basically in a drill, I noticed that those two guys went out there first. And it was one of those things that I just noted in the back of my head, but I didn't even post it anywhere or, mention it on a show or anything because I was just like, it's probably nothing. That probably doesn't mean anything. But then when I combined that with, us seeing that yesterday, combine it with Clayton White really talked up Mo Kaba to Kylan Taylor. I think this was either at the golf outing or at the media day. I think it was at the media day, but just basically said Kaba has made huge strides this offseason. And when I add all those things up, I'm not sitting here saying, pencil him in, but I think that's a great sign, man, because we always talk about linebacker depth. And when I say always, I mean like the last few years, that's been a big concern. Even go back, last year, it seems like the year before, and maybe even the year before that, it seemed like you'd go into the season, South Carolina would feel pretty good about their starters at linebacker, but there would be major questions behind them. And now you're talking about if we can assume that Kaba is starting to maybe push there at the very least, not even just assuming he's first team, let's just assume he's pushing out of this, then that means at the very least, like if he's just pushing that, you have two like ultra veterans, like, both 6-year guys, I think, in Brad and Sherrod.
Yep.
And then you have Mo and then, Debo Williams right out there with him, who, again, very least are providing some competition and could provide excellent depth there. At the most, if you're talking about Kaba beating one of those guys out, then that means he's earned the spot over players who have started before. And in that case, now you have a super senior or two super seniors if Debo Williams were to push into that mix as well. You have two super seniors or a super senior possibly backing those guys up. So either way, man, you're talking about increased depth at the linebacker position this year.
Yeah, it's a win-win. And it's a great point. It's been a theme the past couple, at least. I'll go with you. I'm like trying to go back in my head, couple at least, but maybe
it's
a few
run together,
years.
right?
It does run together because it's been such a consistent theme and that you've got a couple starters. I remember even last year, Clayton White going into year one of the Beamer era at last year's media day was saying, you'd like to have 3 to 5 linebackers. You've got to have 3. And really last year, Carolina didn't really have 3, right? Because start out last year, you've got Sherrod and Brad. You've got Damani Staley, and you've got Mo Kaba, who, again, very young Mo Kaba, still not ready Mo Kaba. Sherrod goes down on the second play of the game, I think it was, against Georgia. So now your top reserve in Damani Staley, a senior who has a lot of experience, he is now your starter alongside Brad Johnson, and you don't really feel good and you don't really trust your depth behind it. So what that ends up being is Brad and Damani, especially Damani, end up playing way too many snaps. And in games where you're getting into the 70s, 80s on your snap counts, that's a big problem. Doesn't matter how good the player is. You don't want to have to play a guy that many snaps. And so that has been a huge issue. So if you can go into this year with a 1-year older Debo Williams, who's now acclimated after a year in the program, with a Mo Kaba that's always had great physical talent, but had a knee injury in high school, if he's learned, grown, developed, waiting his turn, and now you've got 2 6-year guys in front of him who both bring some things to the table. Either way, it shakes out. Whether one of the guys is a depth guy, one of the guys is a starter, whatever combination you make of it, if you can go in feeling good that you have 4 as opposed to 3, that makes a significant difference, going past just who's going to be the starter.
Yeah, it does, man. And I think it kind of, I guess, reminds me a little bit here just to remember, hey, for one, I remember when Mo Caba's class got here. And, Chris and I will always start to hear, hey, this guy has caught the attention of the staff. This guy has been impressive in, just in workouts in the weight room. And we always, we'll mention those guys, but we always sort of have to say, look, this is weight room work. This doesn't always translate to the field. But do you remember it was Luke Doty, it was Marshawn Lloyd, and it was Mo Caba. Those are the 3 guys that I feel like made the quickest impression to the staff when they arrived at South Carolina. Granted, that was the prior staff at the time. But as far as work ethic and just being impressive in the weight room, Mo Caba was right up there with Doty and Lloyd. So, it's taken a little bit of time. He's had to recover from some injuries. That's part of it. But if he could settle in, obviously, I'm starting to repeat myself here, but if he could settle in, that would be excellent for this program, for this team. And, even Debo Williams, I think we all felt like you pop on his film and, when South Carolina landed him as a transfer last year, we were sitting there saying, wow, like this guy could be a steal. But then he doesn't make just an immediate impact, and maybe people start changing their opinions a little bit. And you have to remind yourself, hey, even though he was a transfer, he was still a freshman. Like they didn't even play a season because of COVID, at Delaware where he had transferred from. So I think we got to put all those things into context. And then another layer to this, Stone Blanton has turned some eyes early on, just as far as weight room stuff. And then you go back, Donovan Westmoreland had a really, I would say, a surprise spring. Like I think you can go that far. He had a really strong spring for a true freshman at linebacker. You don't want to have to count on Donovan to go out there and play a bunch of snaps. But if those 2 are like your 3rd group and you're going by 2s in this 4-2-5, I think you feel much better about that spot than you probably have in a long time. Right now, Chris, to me, the position that is comparable to what we used to say about linebacker is now safety.
Absolutely. That is a, in one of your other observations, I will
take this one.
I will let you keep it, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you keep it. But you feel like you've got 2 starters. You've got Devontae Reed, Devontae Reed is another one of the guys on this roster, like a Juice Wells on offense, like a Corey Rucker on offense, that they've done it. They've done it at a high level, at a lower level in terms of where they played, but they have been very productive players. Devontae Reed got here. We heard nothing but positive things about him from the time he got to South Carolina. Then you have RJ Roderick, who's played a lot of football. Beyond those guys, you have a lot of guys that have not done it, whether they're a little bit older, but they just haven't played as much. Whether it's a guy that really hasn't played at all, Peyton Williams at safety, for instance. You just have a lot of guys that haven't played. And so if you have an injury or you get down to that next level, it becomes much more of a crapshoot, because now you're going to be playing somebody that you aren't really sure, what you're getting out of that player potentially.
Yeah, and I think, man, every team has these issues, questions. Even I don't even know if you say they're issues yet. Every team in the country, I would dare say, even Alabama probably has a spot or 2. And it's probably a little different conversation. They're probably like, well, we don't have a 3rd string guy here that could come in and play. The problems are maybe to a different level, to a different extent, but every team has their areas they're circling, saying, I hope there are no injuries here. And, I think for South Carolina, that safety, I can already tell. I'm probably going to overuse this one, but I'm going to say it just because I don't know if I've said it on GC Live as much. But I'm driving the Nick Imamori hype train right now. And again, you and I talked about it. It's not just about that. I think, everything you hear, Nick, we knew fantastic athletic ability here, like fantastic when you talk about combination, size, speed, strength, dude has it in spades. Well, then you start hearing things like, hey, he picks things up incredibly quickly. And you just pair that with what we just talked about, that South Carolina needs safety help. It only makes sense that he is going to be in the mix. So for those who didn't read our observations, Eamon Warry was working in there with the twos, and then Tyrese Ross, a little bit of a forgotten guy, had some hype very, very early in camp last year as a big hitter. Then that just kind of disappeared, Chris. We didn't hear much about him at all. So those are two guys, though, that I'm sitting there, and it's completely different stories. One's brand new. One was a transfer last year. But I think you got to circle them, and it seems like they're going to get every opportunity to maybe show they are ready. I don't see anybody taking the starting spots, but you got to have depth. Those are the two guys I think you circle early on, man, as being like guys to watch out for.
Yeah, and the Ross one was interesting because very early on, like you said, we heard some things about how he could hit. And I remember Clayton White being asked in a media setting about that, and he kind of had that smile and was like, when he hit something, yeah, it was kind of funny. I think, he just kind of maybe hit a wall, right, last year a little bit. And so wasn't as big of a factor as maybe we thought he would end up being. Eamon Warry's a guy that's going to factor in a huge way. I know Torian Gray, DB coach for South Carolina, behind the scenes as talked, or maybe even publicly, but we've heard some things behind the scenes that the comparison's been made to Cam Chancellor of Virginia Tech, if you remember him. Great player there, kind of a similar skill set. So it's not out of the question that one or both of those guys see the field this year, and they're going to need them. Maybe it's a special teams role, maybe it's a few reserve snaps here and there. They're going to have to mix and match a little bit in the secondary potentially, especially if there's an injury. But Eamon Warry's a fascinating player, Wes, because in high school he did everything from receiver to defensive end to linebacker to DB. And, maybe you can be a little bit skeptical about these totals. Maybe they're a little bit liberal in how you count a tackle, but do you remember Eamon Warry's stats from last season, right? From his senior year at Irmo.
I don't remember the numbers, but I remember them being insane.
Astronomical. He had 232 tackles. That's assists plus solos, 4 sacks, 8 forced fumbles is what the Irmo had him at, according to Max Prep. So really productive guy who can fill the stat sheet. He's actually got to talk to Nick a little bit at the last media day, and he was just talking about, mentally picking things up, but that physically he feels like he's fast enough to cover and run with everybody, and he's big enough to come fill the alleys and help you in the run game. And he's right. I mean, he's a physically imposing guy.
I was about to say, I will agree with him on all those accounts. And our guy, Pete Limbo, has got to be looking at this kid saying, you're playing, you're going to be on one of my teams, right? And probably many of Limbo's teams, assuming he doesn't end up, unless there's an injury at safety and he's just having to go play every day at safety. Special teams coach's dream, I think, when you look at a guy that big that can run that fast. You mentioned his stats, numbers regarding his stats. All I could think of was his numbers at camp when he came in and just blew it up. Great size, great speed. And we wondered, hey, is this guy going to one day be, and he still could be, is he going to grow into a linebacker? Is he more of like your traditional South Carolina Ellis Johnson defense, spur, almost like hybrid guy? I think it was his head coach, Coach Brand, that mentioned, this kid could end up being a pass rusher, depending on how big he gets. So I think either way, good get for South Carolina, but I think it's a good sign for South Carolina that he's already starting to get mentions. And again, here's the thing. It's a very quick portion of practice. It's not the gospel. The 11-on-11 does not give you a true depth chart, But I think at safety, knowing with what they were looking at in the spring, you had walk-ons rotating in there with the twos, sometimes with the ones probably. I think it is worth mentioning, that he's already working out there with the twos. There's some other spots, and it was kind of funny, man. I mean, this just tells you the passion, the excitement is ramping up, because on our observations on GC on Monday, I was like, hey guys, do not read into the guys that are working with the ones. Just don't read into it. We're going to note it for you because we're out there. You deserve to know. That's part of what Gamecock Central is all about. But don't read into it. 4 of the first 5 comments are reading into Jordan Birch. Why was he not with the ones? And Jaheim Bell. And I'm like, gosh, Jaheim Bell is quite literally probably going to be the focal point of this offense this year.
Right.
There will be, when South Carolina runs out there and you've had 15 still hands beers before you go out there to watch the game against Georgia State, and the new LED lights are going off and the band is going nuts, I promise you, if he is healthy, number 0 will be on the field for South Carolina. So that just goes to show you they could be working on any number of things. It could be a particular package. It could be that they're giving this guy a breather on the couple of plays we see. It could be that they wanted him to work on something just on the side, some specific thing, right? Like some fundamental. So, I think we do kind of take these things a little bit too far. But that said, other notes, Dylan Wanham, already back working with the ones at right tackle. It was said by Greg Atkins that he's going to work Wanamaker and Wanham in there with the ones at time in camp. I think that tracks. Like, that makes sense. They've both kind of earned some reps, I think, with the ones. Marshawn Lloyd, no surprise. He was with the ones at running back. Spencer Rattler with the ones. I did think it was interesting. We got to see a package where it was Stogner and Nate Adkins on the field at tight end at the same time. I would think that would be probably more of a, hey, you're going to go 2 tights and probably try to run the football a bit,
Yeah, and there's so many when we're going over these players. It's just so it always just pops in my head. Okay, how what's this guy's role? Like, obviously Jaheim Bell, like, find as many ways to get him the ball as possible. Austin Stogner. Then okay, what are these combinations? But like, there's a couple guys that came up in the comments I wanted to address. Plus the guy that you just mentioned, Nate Atkins. He doesn't look like your traditional SEC tight end. He looks a little bit more like a fullback, right? But I think he's going to have a role on this team. He does have very soft hands, but I think he can help as a blocker. I think he can help as a pass catcher. A couple other guys, Wes, came up in the comments. I wanted us to hit on Dante Miller. I want to get your thoughts on Dante. And Lavassier Carroll. We've had a few people ask about him here and in the past. So just to go ahead and hit him. Interesting skill set because he's a taller guy. When he got to Georgia, he transitioned to play DB. So when he transfers from Georgia, he comes to South Carolina. Now you've got to basically kind of retrain him in a way. I mean, obviously he has the background. He's not playing a foreign position, but now you're changing things. You've got a guy used to, backpedaling and shuffling and playing on defense and trying to avoid contact. Now it's getting him back into that running back mentality. So they've gotten his weight back up to where I think he's 205 pounds. He's still 6'1". He still runs a little bit upright. So one of the things that, you're going to see this preseason is Monterio Hardesty, running backs coach, is going to have him working in the chutes a little bit, working on his pad level, working on getting him low. But he's still a guy that can really run. He's fast when he gets to the edges. But it's just kind of getting him bigger, getting him used to that kind of running back mentality again, and then adding some weight to him. So definitely some guys ahead of Lavassier Carroll right now, namely, Marshawn Lloyd and CBS, Christian Beal-Smith, also Juju McDowell, who's another guy that, can do so many different things for you.
Yeah, Juju's headed towards fan favorite category, I think. Craig mentioning Dante Miller. little turbo. Craig says no one mentions him. I feel like we mention Dante more than most, man. I've said this before. Dante is going to help this football team. Like it's going to be hard to get a bunch of carries with the group we just mentioned, but Dante Miller, this team's better with Dante Miller on it than off. I think is the way you say it. But be it special teams, be it just filling in a carry here, a carry there. You never know how a season's going to play out, especially at the running back position, man. You just do not know. When that's a position guys get dinged up, even if you're not talking about the big injury, you get banged up, you have bruises, you have ankles, you know, there's a lot that can happen at that spot. So you can never have enough depth. And, you know, Chris, I know you talked to Hardesty for a while, I think, at Media Days. He's got a different group this year, obviously, but he does still seem pretty excited about the bunch, you would say. And even the other guy, I mean, Rashad Amos, he really almost never gets mentioned. And I really think Amos is a pretty solid back, man. Like he physically looks incredible. Did Hardesty talk about him any at all when y'all talked? Did you ask him
Definitely.
about him?
Yeah, I mean, it would kind of be between Amos and Jordan Birch for like the biggest tree trunk legs on the team. I mean, the dude, he's put together. I think he's about 225 or 230 with about 6% body fat. So, I mean, he's really put together. The issue for Rashad Amos has been, you know, unfortunately, he was banged up last preseason and then he's banged up in the spring. And so he's just gotten behind the 8 ball a little bit.
We lost you, Chris.
Oh, sorry about that. Last year you have Kevin Harris, Zaquandre White, Juju McDowell. And for a lot of different reasons, there was never really like that guy. Like you remember it was Zaquandre, then he disappears. Now it's Zaquandre again. And so I think what they want to get back to this year is finding the guy that can be your guy. Right now, that is Marshawn Lloyd. Like if the season started today, it would be Marshawn Lloyd. But Christian Beal-Smith, Juju McDowell, they're going to be working in with the ones. Talk a little bit more about them in a second. Rashad Amos is a guy that it may not be this year because of the other guys that they've got, but he can play a role. He can continue developing now that he's healthy. This is a guy that was really productive in high school. Physically, he's impressive. He has a downhill running style. I don't think that's a player that you give up on. That might be a guy that in the next year or two, you're going, remember Rashad Amos and kind of what he can do. The staff seems to really, really like Christian Beal-Smith and his pass protection abilities. That's something that kind of goes undervalued with backs. But at Wake Forest, you know, it was really important in their offense. And so he's advanced there. And we've all gotten a glimpse of what, you know, Juju McDowell can do in this offense.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see how they mix and match those guys and give them carries without doing it too much to the detriment to where guys can't find a rhythm. I thought that was an issue at times last year, trying to get everybody the football, rightfully so. Everybody's earned it in practice, but then running back's got to be able to find a rhythm. Then you throw in, hey, Jaheim Bell, how many carries is he going to get? We had a long discussion about Marcus Lattimore's comment. You know, Jaheim Bell may carry the ball 100 times this year. Then you go to practice, Jaheim Bell, very slyly over there taking some handoffs with the running backs. So I tend to think, Chris, no Kevin Harris, as you mentioned. Who's your short yardage back this year? Who's the guy? You know, Christian, maybe it's Christian Beal-Smith. He's not the biggest. He's not as big as Kevin Harris. You know, do you try Rashad Amos out there? I mean, looking at, again, his tree trunk legs look like the guy that would best be able to drive a pile forward. It's kind of like, for my Braves fans out there, Spencer Strider, their pitcher, has, you know, the biggest legs you've ever seen. So I think that's where Jaheim Bell comes into the conversation as well. We've had several people ask us about DJ Twitty as well. I mean, I saw DJ Twitty in high school. outstanding high school running back. Actually reminded me of Brandon Wilds in high school a little bit. Similar style, bigger guys. I think, to be completely honest, it's going to be hard to crack this group that we're talking about. That's nothing against DJ Twitty at all. It's just going to be hard to crack that lineup we're talking about. But Chris, who's getting if it's 3rd and 1 against Arkansas week 2, who are you handing the football to?
Well, and I asked her to see that question, so might have
a real answer.
Might have a little insight on that.
Okay,
and it's still to be determined. I think I've framed it as this. It was more of him almost trying to get to prove one of my theories. So a bad question on my part, right? Instead of just asking it, trying to. But I was asking about Christian Beal-Smith because you pointed out he is lighter than Kevin Harris, which he is by a decent amount. But when he was at Wake, he showed a propensity for being able to get those short yardage plays. I mean, he's a tough runner, like a tougher than he looks runner, and pretty adept in those situations. And so I asked, is that a potential role for him? And while he said yes, but you want your number 1 back to be able to pick that up too. So you kind of talking about Marshawn Lloyd there. You know, Juju McDowell, he said, can be a really good 3rd down back, but you also have to consider if you've got him out there in certain situations, what about pass protection? You know, so certainly there's some guys, you know, Amos, DJ Twitty, like those are bigger guys who are good in short yardage, but it almost sounds like ideally they would like their top few backs, their number 1 back to be able to go out there and be trusted in that situation as well.
But I still think you're if all right, we've seen South Carolina, you know, every team, 3rd and 1, you roll the jumbo group out there. You got Nate Atkins at tight end. You got Wyatt Campbell at tight end. You got, you know, you're sitting there. You're putting the big boys out there. Are you if you're already subbing, and you know, and I think in a perfect world, it's kind of like you don't, if you're staying in the same personnel package. Otherwise, like let's say you're just going to stay in 3 wide or something. You don't want to have to trade out. You don't have to bring out your running back and put somebody else in there and allow the other team to substitute, right? Like you want to be, okay, my guy's going to get this 1 yard, whether it's Juju, you know, Lil Turbo, Marshawn Lloyd, or no matter who it is, right? You want to feel good about it. But if we're subbing guys out and we're going goal line, that's who I'll be curious to see. When you're already subbing them in and out, are you still leaving Lloyd in there? Because you're like, oh, my guy's going to get this 1 yard. Or are you truly going to a bigger back? That's what only time will tell us. Like the first time that happens this season, I'll be curious to see, is there a change up? And sorry, go ahead, Chris. I think you got something.
No, I'm just like over here, like, ooh, I have to give me your, and I can do mine first. Give me your what is your goal line package? It's 3rd and goal on the 1 or 2. What do you have based on this year's personnel? So you can kind of get creative with it.
Okay. My goal line package, obviously, Rattler at QB. I'm trying to think. Nate Atkins is on the field. Stogg is on the field. And because he's done it before, Trey Jones is on the field. And Trey Jones could either, you know, sometimes teams will go goal line and it'll be, wait, how many is that? 5, 8, 9, 10. No, I need another. So 5 O-line, I'm putting Wyatt Campbell and Wyatt Campbell, Nate Atkins, and Stogner as my tight ends. Trey Jones at fullback, Jaheim Bell at running back. And then you can either have a lead blocker with Trey Jones at fullback, or you could go play action to Stogg, give you a big target, or you could go play action with Jaheim out of the backfield as a great option, either just to get lost in the trash, like man coverage, or he'd be good for, run after the catch as well if you dropped it underneath into the flats.
I love it. I like the Jaheim at running back, thing. I think that's the key.
Because you can hand it to him, or you can
Yeah.
use him. Yeah, like that's kind of what I was getting at, man. I mean, I want to see some of these guys. We're not watching scrimmages right now. They haven't even scrimmaged yet, but we're not going to see it when they do. So I don't know what progress these guys have all made, and I haven't really seen that much of Kristen Beal-Smith, in person, up close. So maybe he is the guy. But from what I know, from what I've already seen, Jaheim Bell is the guy I'm handing the football to on 3rd and goal from the 1, or on 3rd down with 1 to go, even at the 50. Like that's the guy I think I'm going to hand the football to. Do you have any tweaks to my personnel?
Well, I wanted to make sure Trey Jones had a role. I also wanted to see if you were going to shoehorn a Jordan Birch or Zach Pickens in there. That's what I'm trying to work through in my head. I wanted those two in there and I'm not going to have Birch throw a pass again unless the guy's wide open. But we won't bring that up. But Zach could carry it. Jordan Birch could carry it. But when you think about that, you're like, okay, now you're taking the ball out of Jaheim's hands, or you're losing a really good, a blocker like Trey Jones, right?
Yeah.
But I like your combo.
You've got a lot of gadgets going on when you do that. Like you've got, if I was going to introduce that, I would take Rattler off the field, and I would stack Trey Jones. And if you want to get one of those two guys involved, stack Trey Jones and Zach Pickens, one to the left, one to the right, and then direct snap the ball to Jaheim, and just be like some high school teams call that like a hammer package, where you're just like, you're going big uglies. You got 10 guys out front, right? And then you're snapping the ball directly to your best athlete. That's what we're doing if it's me and I want to really sort of muck this thing up, I guess you'd say.
Yeah. It's an important question. I mean, again, we're just kind of goofing off a little bit, but it's going to be
ask us.
Yeah. I mean, it's important. They're not going to ask us, but obviously important for South Carolina to go score when they get down there this year. I don't remember off the top of my head statistically in the red zone. I'm kind of blanking on that, what the numbers look like for South Carolina last season. The Tennessee, disastrous play notwithstanding. I'll have to go look that up real quick.
Yeah, it all again, you're getting old, man. We've seen a lot of ball covering things on Gamecock Central. It's all kind of run together a bit, but it'll be very interesting to see. We're going to talk a little bit of recruiting in a second, but before we do so, I want to tell you about our good buddies at Liberty Tax right here in Columbia. You can overcome your tax ID, 803-462-5576. Again, that's 803-462-5576. Obviously, the 2022 tax deadline has long passed, but the tax team at Liberty Tax is still there to help you. If you own a small business and you need advice, you need bookkeeping and payroll services for LLCs, S Corps, and C Corps, or if you unfortunately owe money to the IRS, they can help you out, help you settle your debt rather than you having to call one of those late night 1-800 numbers. They've got a new location at 551 St. Andrews Road. That's by the Harbor Freight. Also locations in Lexington right by the Dunkin' Donuts at 1123 South Lake Drive, and in Irmo near where Chris lives at the Kroger, 7467 St. Andrews Road. Again, 803-462-5576. Shout out to Liberty Tax. Recruiting, Chris. Let's see. Who do we want to talk about? Xavier McLeod has made it clear that he wants to be done with the process soon. I think, based on what you and I have heard, I think soon could be by the end of this week. And it's been interesting, man. This one's been kind of kind of fun to track, actually, in that it's been one of those I've long thought he's going to end up at South Carolina, but at about 10 different points in the process, my confidence in that has like wavered up and down and up and down. And it's kind of been a different team each time, So if this thing finally closes out, this week, where do you think this thing's headed with Xavier McLeod, of course, Camden, 4-star class 2023 defensive tackle?
Yeah, I still think South Carolina's in a good spot. As you accurately stated, in my opinion, it has kind of ebbed and flowed during the recruiting process for a few different reasons. And I think where this thing has ended up, Wes, it really seems like, the Florida, the Florida Gators have kind of made a pretty big push, right? I mean, it kind of seems like they've worked themselves into position to be a dark horse. But yeah, I think for McLeod, the Gamecocks have been in the best position. They've been there. It's kind of the whole stronger, longer thing. And sometimes that can end up backfiring a little bit with certain guys if they've been to your campus, 100 times and they don't commit. But with Xavier McLeod, it looks like things are still aligning pretty well for South Carolina.
Yeah, man. I think to your point, Florida, and I don't believe he's even put out the official top finalists anymore. If it's a 3, if it's a 4, I think the last he said it was probably going to be a top 4. My guess, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia's been in there for a long time. And then kind of the outlier to this whole thing would actually be Michigan. I think those are the 4 I've really actually heard the most about that I think would be the Final 4 for him. And I don't think I can go as strong as to say like done deal, but you do expect it to ultimately end up more than likely percentage wise being South Carolina, and that would be another in-state top get for South Carolina. I think on paper, we kind of knew Monroe Freeling was going to be a long shot for Carolina. You sort of looked at the kind of 3 of the 4. Could you get Montague Rames? Could you get Marquis Anderson? And now can you get Xavier McLeod? If they do that, you're talking about getting what by almost all the rankings in some combination, some order, you will have signed 3 out of the 4 if you can close that out as far as in-state prospects go.
Yeah, and it's always so critical to, when you have good players in your state, you need to sign the best ones or even most of them. The thing is, Wes, I mean, even like you look at the 2010, in-state class. The one before was obviously Stephon Gilmore, DJ Swearinger. You look at 2011, that was Jadeveon Clowney. 2010, Carolina got some good guys out of the state, but they also missed on some. They didn't get, you remember John Fulton was super highly sought after. DeAndre Hopkins went to Clemson. So you're not going to get them all, even when you do extremely well in your state. Clemson's going to grab one or somebody from out of state's going to grab one. But the top 5 to 10 guys, if there are 5 to 10, difference maker types, you need to get the vast majority of those. You can't take as much as some people are like, well, just recruit your state. You can't take 20 guys from the state of South Carolina. It's not feasible. So you're going to have to go outside your state. You're going to have to be resourceful in the transfer portal now that it's here, which South Carolina's operated that. Shane Beamer's done as well as anybody in the transfer portal the past couple cycles. Got to go to the DMV. You got to go to Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. I think South Carolina needs to do even better there. But you got to land the top guys in your state. And they missed a couple, pretty significant ones last year. Class before, a couple guys that didn't even really give Beamer a shot. But now this 23 class, what they've built up to with some of these relationships, they're starting to cash in on those.
And, not that we have to kind of rehash it all, but because we've talked about it a bit, but I think have really, Chris, laid a foundation looking forward, for 2014 as well. It's a very interesting class, maybe the best offensive line class I have seen the state have probably since I've been following this stuff. And I think South Carolina in, relatively good early shape pretty much with all those guys. So that'll be interesting and fun to follow. What do we got rest of the week, team football wise, man? Have you looked ahead to see when we're going to be able to see practice again or next?
I have not, but how about I effort that for us?
Well, put you on the spot here.
Yeah, way to go. No, we've gotten to see 2. I think we only get 4 total, right? So we're here on August 9th. I've actually got the schedule right in front of me. The next one we get to see is Friday, 3:05 practice. And so we'll get to check out the stretch and the first 4 periods of that practice. Yesterday's practice, we got to see 5. So only 4 this time. Hopefully,
I wonder what they're doing in that 5th one, huh?
Or all the other ones that we don't get to see.
Yeah,
I'd be doing a lot.
Definitely. Be sure to go check out Colin Taylor's breakdown from the players. Several guys speaking today on Tuesday. Marion Brown, Lavassier Carroll, Xavier Leggett, our boy Dante, Little Turbo Miller, Jalen Nichols. Jalen Nichols quietly, Chris, kind of locking down that left tackle spot. That sort of went, I don't want to say unnoticed. It went unmentioned in the spring as much as it maybe should have been. And then Tyshawn Wanamaker speaking today as well. Nichols, again, he hasn't come out of nowhere. Like he's been playing in and out since he arrived at South Carolina, but I don't know if it's been talked about enough how much he has seemed to kind of lock down that left tackle spot, though there's a guy behind him that I've always been kind of intrigued by and think has a future in the program as a starter, be Ja'Kai Moore.
Yeah. Well, and Jalen was, I think, a most improved player of the spring. And so that kind of lends itself to exactly what you're talking about. Not coming out of nowhere, right? But a guy that's played a good bit of ball that has just really taken that step forward. And so you look back to 2021 to last season, he started 7 games. He was in 10 games. And, he played left tackle later in the year, but started the season and went through the whole spring, in fact, before that, at left guard. And so he stayed on that left side, but they've slid him out to tackle. Obviously, you've got Moore, who's also worked in at left tackle in the past during his career. That's kind of there, but behind Nichols, Jackson Turnitine, of course, transferred out. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, Nichols really it seems like he's taken a step from last season. This was a guy that, remember, South Carolina's previous staff was really high on out of high school. We were kind of baffled about how he went really kind of under-recruited. North Carolina and Auburn made pushes for him late in his high school career, but this was a big kid from Charlotte who seemed to check a lot of the boxes, who didn't go super, super highly recruited, but it looks like he's really starting to possibly reach his potential.
Definitely, man. Travis asked, do we have the most combined starts by an O-line group in all of college football? I have no idea, man. That's a great question. I wonder where this thing sort of compares to South Carolina O-lines in the past as well. You got to think that there's more experience with this group than most of the ones in recent memory. Also, another note, Chris, I think everybody might need reminding of is that Wednesday, 7 p.m., ESPNU. It is the debut of the Welcome Home South Carolina Football 5-part miniseries on ESPNU. Again, 7 o'clock ESPNU, Wednesday, August 10th. Me personally, man, I'm kind of excited about this. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be interesting. And I think there's probably some things we can learn and then write about from this thing as well, I think. So I'll be curious to see how, I'm a big Hard Knocks fan. I love that show. How much will it be personal storyline with some of the guys? How much actual football are we going to see? How edited will it be? I think it'll be interesting. The NFL is one thing, completely different with college guys, college players, so
yep.
It's going to be we're going in this thing blind. I'll be curious to see exactly how they structure the whole thing.
Well, I've got pretty high expectations because I love that type of stuff. Somebody asked me today on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central kind of what I was expecting. And what I kind of said was You know how they do the SEC Insides on SEC Network during the year, and it's typically the lead up to a game, like a game week, and then during the game, kind of like that, except I would anticipate a little bit more personal stories, and obviously it's not a game week with this type of stuff, but I think it's going to be really cool. Shane Beamer, still operates in the college football space to where there's not going to be open practices like there were years ago under Steve Spurrier. This is just how college football is now, but he does peel the curtain back, a lot more than other college football coaches. And we see that on social media a lot. And so some of these new content things that are coming out from the university or university partners, just like this, I think it's going to be a really cool benefit for the fan base and for us, like you said.
Yeah. We had a question from Michael on YouTube, asked when the next Beamer presser will be. That will actually be, Saturday night after the scrimmage. Beamer is going to speak at Williams-Brice Stadium, actually. So we'll be able to probably some news from that, man. I mean, first scrimmage of the preseason shall be interesting. And I'm excited about this show too. I maybe have too high of expectations. I'm just picturing it's something about the Hard Knocks music that just is perfect for that show. And they do such a good job of just, I don't even think about this stuff when it comes to movies. Like, I just kind of watch movies, but something about Hard Knocks, like their cinematography, like the shots they use to show football, it's like, it's next level. Like, it is just so well done that I am hopeful that this will get the same exact experience or provide the same experience for fans out there. Again, a 5-part video series on South Carolina that will lead right up. The final one would be after South Carolina's first game of the season. So that's exciting. Appreciate y'all joining us. I think I'm done talking for today, Chris. What do you got on your brain, man?
Let's go hunker down on some more content for the people. Speaking of that, I will give 2 shameless plugs, but they're shameless because I don't feel bad about them at all. August 20th, Gamecock Central preseason kickoff party at Steel Hands Brewing. Free event. Steel Hands just released the lineup officially for the concert part. Presented by 1801 Venture Club, as you see up on the screen. 1801vc.com. Amazing organization. You may be saying, what is 1801 Venture Club? We're going to tell you a lot more about it in the coming days here and on Gamecock Central. You're going to learn more about them at the party, but go ahead to 1801vc.com and make sure you read all about it. Lineup is out for the concert, Wes. It's going to be an all-day event. Lots of surprises still to come. VIP tickets still available. So go get your VIP tickets for the concert and the Gamecock Central preseason kickoff party presented by 1801 Venture Club. This thing's really coming together. It's 11 days away. Really excited about it. One more thing also, the deal is still live. Not going to tell you when it's ending, but it's not going to be very long. So if you're not a Gamecock Central subscriber, GamecockCentral.com right now, right at the top, subscribe. 50% off an annual or a monthly subscription for a limited time. So go get on it. Never been a better time, I would argue, Wes.
No doubt, man. I'm excited. Got a lot going on, and we are glad to have each and every one of you right beside us for all of it. And Chris and I will both be there. Maybe even a little extra GC live show, maybe live from the kickoff party there early on. So with that said, I still have this queued up from last year, Chris. So I'm going to let the tunes of our guy, Patrick Davis, play us on out. If you want to stick around and listen, this is actually about 6 minutes from the concert last year. That's all we got for today, but we'll have Patrick out there, and he'll be doing his thing as he always does. Very, very entertaining. Looking forward to that part as well. So for Chris, I'm Wes. We appreciate y'all. We'll see you very, very soon, and y'all have a good one.
Oh, what else can I say? I'm just a big old car. Well, you know I come from a long line of cocks just like me, who never stop believing despite our history. Cause though there's been heartbreak and oh so many tears, I know one day I won't have to say wait until next year. Cause I watched every quarter of 2010, from the beach down of Bama to Atlanta's bitter end. And I've cheered for Alshon Jeffrey, Melvin Ingram and Connor Shaw, and Jadeveon and Marcus were the best I ever saw. Yeah, and I hate them Georgia Bulldogs, Florida Gators, and Rocky Top. Oh, what else can I say? I'm just a big old cock. Yes, and when I die, I have just one request. So if you could, would you promise me this? These boys can still kick the SEC's ass right now. I play quarterback probably, right? I just hand you the ball. I just hand you the ball every time. I've got 1 year of eligibility left, guys, in case you need me. All right, boys and girls, this is the emotional part of the song. If something happens to me between now and the last weekend in November, I want y'all to throw me in the cooler at Steel Hands and bring me out on that Saturday when we're going to kick Clemson's ass. And we're gonna have one hell of a party. We're gonna have Ryan's gonna be there, Corey's gonna be there, Eric. Oh, that's Brian. Oh, he was good. Yeah. Hey, Ryan Maddox right there. All right. So listen, boys and girls, we're gonna have a hell of a tailgate party if that's where. And even if I don't die, we're still gonna do it, okay? And the Midnight Choir is gonna be there. And this is how it's gonna go down. Coach Beamer's gonna show up too. Here it goes, boys and girls. Put a keg on my coffin inside the state fairgrounds. Serve chicken and biscuits with all the fixings, gather everyone around. Have Coach Beamer say some words, let Hootie lead the choir. And then send the boys off to destroy them damned old Clemson Tigers. Cause I heard all the stories of the great George Rogers. Now back in 1980, it made the whole nation holler. And I've seen that photograph of young Steve Tannehill up at Old Death Valley, signing his name on the field. Yeah, and I love to hear 2001 if they're waiting surprise to rock. Oh, what else can I say? Hey, till my dying day, I'll be a South Carolina Gamecock. Yes, I will. Yes, I will. Hold on. Yes, I will. All right, hold on. Over here. I grew up with this man playing guitar every morning. I like to call him, I call my dad the human alarm clock. Because every morning at 6:29, he'd crank his Marshall up to about 11. And he'd play some Led Zeppelin or some Jimi Hendrix or some Allman Brothers and shake our asses right out of bed. So if you will, put your hands together for the man, the myth, the legend, my old man, Mr. Rusty, the human alarm clock Davis. Give him some chicken picking, Daddy. So put a keg on my coffin inside the state fairgrounds. Serve chicken and biscuits with all the fixings, gather everyone around. Corey, come back. Have Coach Beamer say some words. Let Mark Bryan lead the choir. And then send the boys off to destroy them damned old Clemson Tigers. Cause I've heard all the stories of the great George Rogers. Now back in 1980, it made the whole nation holler. And I've seen that photograph of young Steve Tannehill up at Old Death Valley, signing his name on the field. Yeah, and I love to hear 2000. Feel my